I've been alive for 4.5 centuries, and I cannot die.
Well, everybody's got their problems.
Hello and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host Maverick, Dren, Zaria. This week we're taking a look at the 1985 film, Highlander.
1986.
Damn it, why did I think it was 5? Because the movie takes place in 85, that's why.
It's 1986.
Yeah.
It's fine. Wait, are we doing the car Highlander or the... No, I mean, there can be only one, you know?
I want to be the person that owns the last Highlander car ever, just so I can say that.
Just so you can say, yeah, that'd be great.
Toyota needs to stop making new ones every year.
But yeah, so maybe you'll win a prize if you do that. Who knows? But yeah, so Highlander was released in 1986, and it cost $19 million and made less than $13 million at the box office. So yeah, it gained a cult following, and then they made a bunch of shitty sequels.
The sign of any good movie is how bad its sequels are.
How far did they miss the point with the later ones? I'll be talking about some of those when we get to that. Okay, so it was directed by Russell Mulcahy, and he also directed Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Oh, good.
The Shadow,
Okay.
and Resident Evil Extinction.
Oh no, he was the guy that took over for that movie? Oh no. Now we have another connection.
To be fair, that is one of the better Resident Evil movies. It's not saying much, but...
Well, was that the third or the fourth one?
That was the third one.
Oh, so that's the one where they copied Mad Max throughout it, okay.
And there's like those terrible CGI birds to make it look like Birdemic. And before directing movies, he did, you guessed it, music videos.
Oh, any notable ones?
A lot, actually. I was looking through his music video credits, and they're actually really impressive. So some of them include Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney.
Oh!
Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. Now that's
a big one.
Yeah, because that was the first music video that played on MTV. It was huge. Turning Japanese by the Vapors. A lot of Duran Duran music videos. If it was a Duran Duran song, he probably did the video for it. That's how many Duran Duran music videos he did. A ton of Elton John songs. Some Billy Joel music videos. True by Spandau Ballet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I referenced that song in the previous podcast, not realizing that connection. Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard, and of course, the music videos for some of the Queen songs featured in this movie. I mean, why wouldn't he?
Yeah. That's an impressive list of music videos.
I know, yeah. Because I knew he directed music videos, I didn't realize just how extensive the list was. So the movie stars Christopher Lambert, or Christophe Lambert. He's French. Funny, casting a French guy as a Highlander.
Well, yeah, no, we cast a French guy to play a Scotsman. We cast the Scotsman to play a Spaniard, and we cast an American to play the Russian.
He's not Spanish, he's Egyptian.
Oh, that's right. He's Egyptian, but he wears Spanish clothes and has a Spanish name.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Christopher Lambert, some of his other credits include Raiden from the Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh, no.
The 90s one.
Yeah.
Did you recognize him, by the way,
I did not, actually.
I'm surprised, actually.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
Maybe we should do that movie on the podcast. We need more Christopher Lambert movies. And he also played Tarzan in Greystoke.
okay.
Yeah. That was before this movie. Sean Connery, I mean...
You don't have to say much about him.
Yeah, James Bond, we just had him a few months ago in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Clancy Brown, which I'm surprised it's taken this long to get him on the podcast.
Have we really never had him before, like even in a cameo?
I don't think so, no.
Wow.
But his filmography, there's a lot of stuff we can mention, but his most famous role is probably Mr. Krabs.
Yeah.
SpongeBob. He played Lex Luthor in some of the animated Superman shows. Captain Hadley from The Shawshank Redemption, among others. He played Darth Maul's brother.
In the Clone Wars TV show.
Savage Opress. Which is a strange name.
He was Captain Hadley in Shawshank Redemption.
I mentioned that, yeah, because that's your favorite movie, so...
Yeah.
That's kind of his, yeah. Whenever he plays a villain, I'm always just like... Maybe part of it is because he played Mr. Krabs, and it's just funny seeing him playing, so maybe it's not that.
Yeah.
Alan North, which... He was in the TV show Police Squad, which was later adapted into the Naked Gun movies.
Oh, he was in that?
Yeah, he played his...
Huh.
It was the same character George Kennedy played in the movies.
Okay.
Leslie Nielsen, I think, was the only actor who was in both the show and those movies. But there's also... I didn't realize this. There's quite a few Star Wars actors in this. Because we got Hugh Quarshie, and he played Captain Panaka in The Phantom Menace.
Oh.
And Christopher Malcolm, which he played Rogue 2 in The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Is the guy that finds Han Solo and Luke, like at the beginning of the movie on Hoth. He's like, I found them. Repeat, I found them.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy, he's also in Superman 3. He plays a miner in Superman 3. And in this movie, he plays the guy that tries killing the Kurgan with a machine gun and ends up in the hospital. Now, the music, the score was done by Michael Kamen, which he's probably most known for doing the score for Die Hard.
Oh, wow.
Brazil. A bunch of other movies. And Lethal Weapon. He did the Lethal Weapon movies as well. But more importantly, this has
How could you leave out Roadhouse?
And Roadhouse. He did the music for Roadhouse, of course. But more importantly, this movie has a soundtrack by my favorite band, Queen. This has a ton of Queen songs.
I was surprised how often I was listening to Queen music during this movie.
And I do actually own the soundtrack on CD. Well,
yeah.
It's kind of a soundtrack because it includes most of the songs in the movie and then a bunch that weren't in the movie.
Okay.
And also the version of A Kind of Magic is different from the one they play during the end credits of the movie. And I've mentioned before, my profile picture in several places is Freddie Mercury from the music video for A Kind of Magic. So at the very least, you should know I'm a fan of the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack. And they also did the soundtrack for Flash Gordon, which I love the music for Flash Gordon as well. So initial thoughts. I'll let you go first on that.
Okay, so this was my first time ever actually watching this movie. I actually hadn't heard too much about this one. I heard a lot more about the sequel, The Quickening.
That's usually the case, yeah. The second one is...
And so I didn't quite know what to expect from this. I knew that it had something to do with a bunch of immortal swordsmen fighting each other in the mid-'80s, and that was about it. And so I went in with, not a whole lot of expectations. And I really liked the movie. It was very enjoyable, pretty fun. It definitely feels like an 80s era
It
film.
does.
It just has that sort of quality to
That was
it.
something when I was rewatching it. I was watching it. I was just thinking, I forgot just how 80s a lot of this is. Just from like the way it's shot and stuff.
Yeah.
And the music, obviously.
But yeah, I thought it was a pretty fun movie overall. All of the cast seemed like they were enjoying themselves. The sword fights were great. That's obviously a highlight of this movie. Costume design was pretty good, even though that really only applies during a few points in the movie. But yeah, I just thought it was a pretty fun movie.
And this is a movie I've seen a number of times. I didn't really hear much about it until I was in high school, and even then, I'd mostly just heard of Highlander 2, The Quickening, because
It's one of those legendarily bad movies.
literally it's such a joke of a movie that just the title is a punchline. You add The Quickening to the end of anything, and it just... Now, this movie has 3 ingredients that I love. And you can probably guess what they are. Sword fighting. I love sword fighting.
Mm.
Queen songs. I love Queen, obviously. And Sean Connery. I love Sean Connery. So just from that, you can tell why I like the movie.
Yeah.
Well, that, and you also have Clancy Brown as the villain. He's a fun villain in this, I think.
Yeah.
This is the movie that makes me excited when I find out he's playing a villain, because... It's his performance is just so crazy and just wild, and it's so funny that here he is just chopping people's heads off, being a complete asshole, and then later he played Mr. Krabs.
It's always fun comparing like any of his roles to Mr. Krabs. He was in this this video game called Detroit Become Human, and his voice sounds like he's almost doing the Mr. Krabs voice. And he's just dropping like F-bombs every 5 seconds. It's the funniest thing.
And also, if you haven't guessed from the plot, this movie did somewhat inspire that superhero idea I had.
Yeah, I figured.
I don't know how obvious that was when you read it, but... Because it's a great idea for a plot. It's this guy he's been alive for centuries, and he has to fight like other people who are also... been alive for a long time. And I do think they could have done a little more with the concept of immortality, but it is an entertaining film. Rewatching it, I was realizing the pacing and structure of this is kind of weird, especially in the first half. But it's a fun movie. It's got a lot of memorable scenes and lines.
Yeah.
The plot's pretty good. I think we could just get right into the timeout. So we start with an opening crawl with narration by Sean Connery.
No better way to start off a movie.
Yeah, and he's talking about this species of immortal beings. They have this thing called the Gathering, where they have to duel until only one is left. And the reason there's an echo on the narration is because Sean Connery recorded it while he was in the bathroom. So, and then we get the opening credits. We got the Queen song "Princes of the Universe" playing, which I love that fucking song.
Oh
It's an
yeah.
awesome song.
And I gotta say, I was honestly surprised we heard Queen so early in the movie.
It's a perfect song to start off. It's just this great rock song that's just like, it gets you like pumped for like the rest of the week. And then we see a wrestling match. I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, wait a second, why is there a wrestling match going on? And did you recognize any of the wrestlers by any means, or?
I don't think I did, no.
Yeah, I didn't either. No Undertaker or...
No Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, yeah, those... fucking Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, Randy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You do it better than I do. And Connor McLeod, Christopher Lambert's character, he's just sitting there watching this wrestling match, he does not look like he's enjoying himself.
No, he looks pretty bummed out watching this, actually.
He looks so bored during and angry. He's just sitting up there in the audience. And there's kind of this other guy who's like, just looks at him kind of pissed off, wondering why he's not enjoying the wrestling match. And then during this, he starts having flashbacks to the Scottish Highlands.
As one does. Sometimes I just sit there looking forlorn, thinking about Scotland.
Yeah. Yep, I remember when I was an extra in Braveheart. Or was it Rob Roy? Wait a minute. But yeah, so all that's happening. Then he just gets up and leaves, and immediately goes to have a sword fight in a parking garage.
As one does.
With this guy who's wearing sunglasses. This fight is a little bit ridiculous. The guy's just doing all these, like, backflips and stuff.
And, like, every time their swords clash, there's, like, sparks that come out of it. They set, like, the front of a car almost on fire when they hit it with a sword at one point. Because it just, like, explodes with a bunch of sparks.
Yep. And then he cuts the guy's head off. You see lightning, and then, well, the cars are, like, exploding. And the lightning, later we find out that that's called the quickening, which... I still find that so funny that they used that as the title for the next movie. And then we flash back to Scotland again, and this is where we start getting his backstory. We basically learn he's named Connor MacLeod, he's from the Scottish Highlands.
In the 1500s.
1500s, yeah. And this is also where we realize that Christopher Lambert can't do a Scottish accent. That's one thing that I do like the movie, but I'll always make fun of this movie just for the fact they cast a French dude as a guy from the Scottish Highlands, and they cast a Scottish guy as a Spanish or Egyptian guy. And Christopher Lambert, he was a weird casting choice for this role. I think it does work.
Yeah, I think it works well enough. It's never really, like, you notice it the first time that it's, like, a bad accent, but it never gets distracting, I'd say.
It gets less distracting later, because later in the movie, there's that guy that asks him, like...
Talk funny, Nash. Where are you from? Lots of different places.
At least, like, later in the movie, like, he's just been around the world, and, like... his voice has kind of changed, so that we can excuse that at least. He's just a very weird presence, but I think it works.
Yeah.
For the character, because he's kind of just this loner who doesn't really relate to people for obvious reasons. So whenever he interacts with people, you can kind of just excuse it as, okay, it's just because he's been alive for 500
years.
So, like, of course, he's not gonna relate to people that well. He's just this weirdo that's been around a long time. You know? And there's this big battle, and this is also where we first see Clancy Brown's character, the Kurgan. And his costume is great.
He's got, like, this massive skull just around his head.
He looks like a Conan the Barbarian character.
He does.
Wait, his costume has a skull on it. Is he a baddie? And then this scene is interesting because he tells his men to avoid killing Connor MacLeod because he wants to kill him himself.
Yeah.
Since he's also got the same, like, the immortality curse. I don't know what to call it exactly.
But at this point, Connor doesn't know that he has this.
Yeah, but he finds out soon.
Yep.
Because he he stabs him, and this is another thing. Whenever I watch this movie, that stab does not look convincing.
No, there's a couple stabs during this movie, like when it flashes back to the 1700s and he's having a duel. It looks like the guy's just poking the sword like almost under his armpit at points. Like, it's so very obviously fake.
So basically the beginning of this movie, it's just cutting back between Connor McLeod in the present and Connor McLeod in Scotland. And in the present, he gets arrested by these police officers, and he's going by the name Nash in the present day. And I'll admit, the first time I saw this movie, the structure was a little confusing. Like, if you don't know the plot beforehand, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on at first. At least until Sean Connery just shows up and dumps a bunch of exposition on you.
Yeah, and he explains everything.
Yeah. And then back in the past, they have a funeral for Connor McLeod, but then it turns out, I'm still alive, motherfucker. He, like, comes back to life, which scares the other Highlanders, and
they think it's, like, devil worship or devil practice that brought him back.
Yeah, they think he's, like, in league with Lucifer, and he just gets beaten up, banished, which... Now you see why he doesn't trust people that much, because they find out he can do that, and then they're like, well, fuck off. Yeah, so the police in the present day, they're just investigating the decapitations going on. Oh, that just made me think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And there's just those cops, like, in the background, like...
investigating when... Wasn't it Lancelot that killed the historian?
He killed a historian or something, yeah. It kind of made me think of that. Hell, parts of the movie kind of look like that movie, too.
Yeah.
Like the parts in Scotland, at least. And it would be confusing if just, like, you're in New York, people are just getting their heads cut off, like...
It'd be very worrying, to say the least.
Yeah, there'd be like, oh shit, is this some other Son of Sam bullshit going on?
Wait, when did Son of Sam happen? Was this before or after?
This is after.
Okay.
But they'd probably think it's something like that. Like, oh shit, some dude is like talking to his dog or something. It's telling him to kill people. And some of the interactions with the cops I thought were funny.
Yeah.
They're so mean to him.
There was that one that was really out of line.
Yeah, he's like being like super like homophobic. He's like,
yeah,
accuses him of asking the guy for like a blowjob and stuff.
Yeah, no, I was not expecting that line. Like, I was like, whoa, okay.
It was 1986, so
yeah.
And we also got the Kurgan in the modern day. He's just driving around in a car listening to Queen on the radio.
And he's like in like this weird like biker uniform where it's like all leather, these combat boots.
Yeah, his hair kind of looks like Steven Seagal's hair a little bit.
It does. And he ends up checking into this motel. And there's this amazing scene where he's like practicing or like warming up essentially, and he has to construct a Scottish claymore.
Yeah, the scene of him putting the sword together is interesting. It just like links together and stuff. Like,
yeah, I was like, it's because the blade's in two parts, and he has to like build it, which seems ineffective.
I've never seen a sword do this before. But it does look really cool, though. Like, the sword designs in this, I think, are pretty good. They definitely chose some unique sword designs for this movie.
Yeah. Especially that claymore.
And he basically, yeah, he has it in a box and puts it together. Then they send in this prostitute.
Hi. I'm Candy.
Of course you are.
Closes the door. And another character we haven't mentioned, Brenda. She's this, like, reporter that's investigating all these murders, and then later ends up getting involved with Connor McLeod for some reason.
And she's also an expert in like swords. Not like sword fighting, but like an expert on like sword construction and swords throughout history.
I mean, who isn't an expert on ancient swords in the 1980s? And Brenda, she goes to a bar and you hear another Queen song.
Because we haven't had enough yet.
Every other scene, it's just, and then we hear another Queen song.
And then Queen shows up.
If they actually showed up in the movie, I would have just been so happy. Like, give Freddie Mercury a cameo. And she's in the bar, Queen's playing, and then Connor McLeod is also there. And he's just asking her some weird questions. Like, he asked her if she's been to Madison Square Garden. And she's like going like, "Are you following me?" He tries asking her if he can walk her home. It's a weird interaction.
You can tell that Connor doesn't interact with people very much.
Yeah. He's the ultimate introvert. He's even more of an introvert than I am. He just always... And while on the way, they're just walking, basically. And then Connor gets in a fight with the Kurgan. This fight I always thought was kind of weird, because they're... At one point, he's, like, using a pipe to, like, hit him. And then Connor McLeod gets hit with the pipe.
And of course, just like the last time, there's like lightning and sparks everywhere as they fight.
Yeah. But the Kurgan does not kill him because some cops in a helicopter show up. That's convenient. And we get another flashback. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. And basically, it's back to Connor McLeod in the past in Scotland. He's living on a farm with his wife, Heather. And then Ramirez shows up.
We get our favorite Spaniard Egyptian, Sean Connery.
Yes, and Sean Connery basically plays Obi-Wan Kenobi in this.
Yeah. A little bit more eccentric than Obi-Wan, but basically, yeah.
A little bit more eccentric. And he mentors the hero, and then he gets killed by Darth Vader, Clancy Brown. I love his costume in this movie, by the way.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
It's just this red jacket and hat with a bunch of peacock feathers. And here he's just explaining to Connor that he's got the same abilities. I don't know how he found him though, exactly.
I'm just gonna say it's the quickening led it to him. I'm just gonna use the quickening as the Force from now on.
Okay. Yeah, so speaking of the quickening, he's getting shocked by lightning. Ramirez explains it's called the quickening. They don't really explain exactly what it is in this movie, though.
He basically just says it gives you, like, a connection to the world around you. So, like, at one point, he can, like, hear a deer's heart, or, like, an elk's heartbeat, and then he's able to follow it.
Yeah. So it's the Force.
Basically.
Let's just call it the Force. It's Force lightning, but not Force lightning. And I love the way this scene ends, too, where, like, Sean Connery is, like, saying,
"We are the same, McLeod! We are brothers!"
And then it just immediately cuts to the present.
Yeah.
I always thought that was funny. And Sean Connery looks like he's having a lot of fun.
He looks like he's having a blast. He's like smiling ear to ear in every scene he's in.
One thing that definitely comes across in this movie is that Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert really liked working with each other.
Oh yeah. You could tell Clancy Brown had a blast too.
Him too, yeah. Like those three definitely like I also like this one transition where we go from a fish tank to the lakes of Scotland.
I like that one too. That one was kind of fun. 'Cause it basically focuses on this fish swimming in a fish tank, and then it pans up and you're at a lake suddenly.
It was pretty good, yeah. And this scene I always thought was really funny where they're arguing in a canoe. Ramirez and McLeod, they're just arguing, and he calls him haggis.
Haggis? What is haggis?
Sheep's stomach stuffed with meat and barley.
And what do you do with it?
You eat it. How revolting.
And this is also where he says he's not Spanish, he's Egyptian, which that's so confusing.
Especially because he sounds Scottish.
He sounds Scottish, he looks Spanish, but it claims to be from Egypt. Like, just get Omar Sharif to be in the movie, for fuck's sake. And also Ramirez, like, he tells McLeod,
You have the manners of a goat, and you smell like a dung heap.
and you have no knowledge whatsoever of your potential. Which, that's another insult that was on that movie insults app I used to have.
It's a pretty good insult, to be fair.
It is, yeah. And he basically just pushes Connor McLeod out of the canoe into the water. He's like showing, you fucking idiot, you're immortal.
Yeah, you can't die.
You cannot die, McLeod. Accept it. Sean Connery has a lot of great lines in this. And I like the part where he's just underwater and he's just like laughing underwater.
Yeah.
Because he's not drowning. And Christopher Lambert's laugh I just find amusing too, because it's just this like really sarcastic laugh. It's sort of like Ricky Caldwell's laugh from Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. And he's just asking Ramirez like why he's immortal. Ramirez says,
Why does the sun come up? Or are the stars just pinholes in the curtain of night? Who knows?
I feel like that's a lot of this, is I'm just quoting like Sean Connery's lines. But this is where he's basically just explaining all this stuff to Carmen. Yeah. He explains the rules. He says there's this gathering
where all of these immortal people just want to kill each other and basically kill each other until there's only one person left. And whoever's left receives the prize. And
the only way you can die is if you get your head cut off.
Yep.
And you get all this exposition while they're training with swords. So, some good imagery, too. Like, there's just tons of shots of them, like, just standing up on, like, mountains.
Yeah.
Swords. It was also reminding me of Star Wars, too. There was quite a few parts of this that were reminding me of Star Wars.
I mean, like we mentioned, the quickening is essentially the Force.
Christopher Lambert is Luke, Ramirez is Obi-Wan, and then the Kurgan, I guess, is Darth Vader.
An eccentric version of Darth Vader.
Or is he the Emperor? Is he more like the Emperor?
Oh, no, he's more like the Emperor.
He's the Emperor, but with the physique of Darth Vader. There we go.
Yeah.
And it also gets established that they cannot fight on holy ground.
Which, that's an interesting detail that only comes up one other time in the movie.
Any scene with Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery, these two just have such great chemistry.
Yeah.
They really look like they enjoy each other's company. And then Ramirez, he's also telling Connor that he has to leave his wife, Heather, because she'll die since she's not immortal. Which, this is an idea I always found really interesting, that, like, you know, just seeing, like, the downsides of being immortal.
Yeah, because if you make any connections with people who aren't immortal, they are going to go away.
Which I guess is why he has some... There's that one guy who shows up later, who's also immortal. He kind of seems to have, like, a friendliness with him. I don't know if he's, like, a close friend, but he just... Because those are probably the only people he can relate to, really. It's like...
Yeah. And there's not a lot of those out there who aren't murderous psychopaths.
Yeah, like the Kurgan. And speaking of which, the Kurgan, this is, like, the role Clancy Brown was born to play. I mean... Like, he feels like a Conan the Barbarian villain.
He really does.
And the guy looks like he's having so much fun just playing this complete bastard.
I like how at one point when Sean Connery's talking about him, he says that he's Kievan Rus and that they would throw children into pits with dogs and have them fight over meat. Like, they just set him up as this, like, absolutely horrible person with no redeeming qualities.
And it's also just interesting thinking, like, what the hell would a dude like this do with, like...
Immortality.
It's sort of like if Genghis Khan was around in modern day. Like, it's sort of like that. Or is he more like Attila the Hun? I guess Attila the Hun could also work, but, like... Just one of those types of, like, just barbarian, like, conqueror types.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't forget the famous line,
In the end, there can be only one.
basically, because only one person can win the prize. And hopefully it's not the Kurgan, because that would be not good. It always made me really sad, though, because that Sean Connery dies in this movie. Because he has this big fight scene with the Kurgan,
and it's a pretty good fight scene.
It is, yeah, but he dies horribly. Like, he gets stabbed through and then gets his head cut off. I like during this fight how they just destroy an entire castle in the process. Like,
and I like how at the end of the fight they're standing on top of a staircase, which is the only part of this structure that remained intact.
Yeah.
It's a cool shot.
Yeah. And we'll get to the second movie, but the one thing that makes the second movie ridiculous is that Sean Connery is also in the second movie. There's also what was interesting was seeing flashbacks to... I'm surprised there weren't more of these, of, like, Connor during, like, other historical time periods.
Yeah.
Because there's, like, one
we have
World War II.
Yep. That one was interesting, and I do wish we would have gotten to see more of that.
And what's crazy, that scene was not in the US version. It was cut.
Oh, really?
We didn't get to see, like... If you buy, like, the DVD, like, some versions say director's cut, basically, it's the version that was shown everywhere else except the US. Okay. And it cut, if I remember right, it cut a couple of scenes. This was one of them. And it's the scene where he rescues this girl from Nazis. And then he pretends to get shot and killed by a Nazi soldier. I like this one line where he's like, he, like, gets up... The guy's, like, shouting German at him, and he says,
"Whatever you say, Jack. You're the master race."
He just shoots him with a machine gun.
So, I'm not super up to snuff on my German, but I think he said something like, "You're gonna have to shoot me."
And I'm trying to remember, but... what the name of the girl was that he rescued? Was that Rachel?
I think so.
Yes, Rachel. And she works as his, like, secretary. He has this antique store?
I mean, that's a pretty good line of business if you're immortal.
I guess, yeah, it'd be very easy to acquire these things. And we get this really awkward scene where he goes over to Brenda's apartment for a date. kind of. It's like a dinner, but then
he's suspicious of her, and he ends up finding the gun that she's hidden. He finds this tape recorder she's using to record everything he says.
Yeah, I like the part where she's just like off somewhere else, and he's just investigating the room.
Yeah,
while she's
and he
gone.
sees the cop that's like sitting outside the apartment.
He also like talks about the year of the wine that they're drinking.
Yeah.
But he must have really good memory too, if he's just able to remember like all the stuff that happened to him in that year, and like
I'm just gonna say it's because of the quickening.
the quickening, yeah.
Can't explain it, it's the quickening.
Yeah. It's sort of like in some of the Star Wars movies. So, how did you do that? The dark side.
Dark side of the Force.
And then we get another flashback, and this scene is really, really sad. It's Who Wants to Live Forever. It's this really emotional, like, sad song, and it fits perfectly.
Yeah.
I think. It fits the scene perfectly. Because it's Connor with his wife, Heather, and she's growing old and dying.
Yeah, and she ends up passing away in his arms, and she sounds like she really regrets not being able to spend forever with Connor. Because she basically says at one point, I don't want to die, I want to live with you.
Yeah. Again, it's just... Well, one thing I will say about this scene, though, the old age makeup isn't the best.
No, it's pretty bad.
But it is a really sad, effective scene, I think. Probably because the song's great. But it does a good job showing, like, the implications of immortality.
Yeah.
Which they also kind of did in, like, some of the Lord of the Rings movies with Arwen and Aragorn.
Yeah.
Well, but not quite like this, but the idea of like an immortal person trying to, in love with a mortal. And then back to the present day, we meet Castigear, who is Captain Panaka from the Phantom Menace. I assume you didn't know before I mentioned that was who that was.
I did not know that was him.
I'll admit I forgot it was him, but like when I look at him and I like read the Wikipedia page, I'm like, oh yeah, that is him. He just has a beard in this. That's why,
Yeah.
And obviously he's younger in this. And he's basically just this. He's another immortal that's friends with McLeod. I like how when they meet, Connor McLeod like pretends to reach into his jacket and pull out a flask. Like he's signaling to him that he wants a drink, and then Castigear pulls out a flask out of his jacket. I just find that little detail funny.
And they end up reminiscing about a party they had in the 1700s. It's a pretty funny scene.
Yeah, it's another flashback where this scene. Yeah, this was the other scene that was cut from the U.S. version. I should point out.
And so basically, Connor gets like absolutely drunk. He insulted some. I don't know. Was he a British officer? I think it was a British officer that he insulted his wife.
This felt like a scene from like Rob Roy or Barry Lyndon or something. It's really strange. He's just getting in duels with these guys in powdered wigs,
and that they keep stabbing him because he's drunk out of his mind. But because he's immortal, he doesn't die. And Connor keeps trying to start the fight over and over again, so he gets stabbed like 20 times.
Maybe that's how Andrew Jackson survived so many duels.
Maybe he was one of the immortals. In that case, who decapitated him?
Aaron
Or is he
Burr?
still out there?
Did Aaron Burr decapitate him? Or no? Anyway.
I'm looking up Andrew Jackson death. We're gonna see.
It's too bad that this scene was cut, because I think it's pretty funny.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good.
The one guy, like, running away and gets shot in the back of the head. I always thought that was funny. I mean, I can kind of see why that part and the other part were cut, though, because it does feel a little bit out of place, but I don't know.
But it's fun. It's a nice character moment.
It again it makes me wonder what more you could do with this concept, which again is why I wrote well, I won't get into that.
Yeah.
And then back in the present, we got the Kurgan again. And he hassles a desk clerk at the apartment. Because the desk clerk is like saying, oh, Candy said you were really kinky. Like last night or something like that. He doesn't seem to appreciate that. We get another Queen song playing while a guy's driving a car. It's a Hammer to Fall, which was not included on the soundtrack, unbelievably. Probably because it was a pre-existing song before the movie, though. That's probably why. But, good song, though. Well, all the songs are good in this movie. I mean, who am I kidding? It's Queen. And the guy's like driving a car. He stops and sees the Kurgan fighting Castigear, and poor Castigear gets his head cut off.
I love what happens
but
after
it's okay.
the fight.
He'll get to come back to life and work for Queen Amidala later. So it's okay.
So after he decapitates him, this other guy in the alley who was a Vietnam vet open fires.
Yeah. Oh my god! Wait
Clancy
a second.
Brown.
That means the two Star Wars actors are in the same scene too.
Oh, that's right.
Because he's Rogue too. It's too bad Castigear dies, because I liked that guy. He was fun. But yeah, the guy in the car, he tries shooting the Kurgan with a machine gun, and it doesn't work. And then, this part's great, he stabs him with a sword and lifts him up on the sword and throws him, anybody that's able to do that, you don't want to fuck with. I mean, Jesus.
And this whole time, the buildings are exploding around him. There's glass flying everywhere. There's all these onlookers that see him gaining all this power from killing.
Yeah, there's people watching it too. Oh my god. Yeah. That is one detail I like, that the quickening gets more and more destructive as it goes on throughout the movie. Yeah, there's just a bunch of people watching this too. He steals a guy's car, he pushes him out, and drives away with the guy's wife in the car. And then he yells at him, "Where are you going with my car?" And said, "Well, I don't know, where are you going with my wife?" But anyway. It's just, and every time the Kurgan is driving in this movie, the dude is just a road terrorist. He does not follow traffic laws at all.
Not at all.
He's such a jerk. One brief scene, there's this guy reading a newspaper or a tabloid in front of the cops, and the article's talking about how they've failed to catch the killers.
Yeah, the guy who's been beheaded 3 people.
And the guy reading the tabloid says, "What does incompetent mean?" Oh, this was interesting. Brenda, forgot she was a character in this movie. Wait a second. She's still investigating McLeod.
And she finds out that the alias he's using, Russell Nash, was that of a kid who died during childbirth.
And she basically goes and finds some computer whiz who's able to figure out that McLeod, he's just been taking the identities of kids that died in childbirth.
And he ends up doing this by taking handwriting samples from all of his different identities and stitching them together. And it matches perfectly with his current signature.
His signature has never changed, apparently. And that's basically, they find out, oh yeah, this dude's been alive for centuries. That's apparently all the evidence you need.
They believe that very readily.
This next part, this is great. The church scene. This scene is like the apex of Clancy Brown's acting in this movie.
It's so psychotic. So McLeod goes into this church to light a candle for Heather.
And
as he's sitting there, Clancy Brown comes in. And, if you remember, they're not allowed to fight on holy ground.
So he just
this is
taunting him the whole time, and like, and all the people in the church, they're just staring at them. They're like, who are these weirdos?
And I love when he interacts with the nuns and then later the priest.
Yeah, he like sticks out his tongue at some nuns, says,
"Happy Halloween, ladies." Nuns. No sense of humor.
His head's like almost entirely shaved except for like a couple strands on the side of his head.
Another thing, I don't know if you noticed this, but he's got all these like safety pins in his neck.
Yeah.
To hold his head onto his body. And yeah, he also shaved too. Oh my goodness. He just looks like a villain in this scene. He's just all dressed in leather, acting like a complete asshole while people are trying to pray.
And then the priest comes up and he's like,
"This is the house of God. People are trying to pray. You're disturbing them."
He cares about these helpless mortals.
Of course he cares. He died for our sins.
That shall be his undoing. Father, forgive me. I am a worm.
And he like bows down, he takes his hand and he licks the priest's hand.
And then before leaving, he says,
"I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away."
Spins around and punches the air while shouting. Oh my god. It's so funny. He was quoting the Def Leppard song Rock of Ages. Because they say that at the beginning of the song. After Unter, Glauter, Gleben, Globen, or whatever the fuck. The fake German that they say at the beginning of that. That whole scene. And Connor McLeod also, he's just so mad at this.
Yeah, you can tell he wants to kill him right there, but he's not allowed to because it's Holy Land.
And then soon after this, he tells Brenda that he's immortal. And he proves this by stabbing himself. Basically.
Yeah.
Which this sort of reminded me of a deleted scene from Superman 2 a little bit. Where Clark Kent ends up accidentally proving he's Superman. It's only in the Richard Donner version. Yeah, but it sort of reminded me of that. And after this, they kiss and have sex. Because chemistry?
Because we needed a romance plot in our story about immortal swordsmen.
And after what he experienced with, like, Heather, you'd think he wouldn't do that again. It doesn't really make much sense. And he has better chemistry with Rachel and Heather than with Brenda, so...
Yeah.
Like, why would he... I don't know. That was one of the things that didn't really make sense to me with this movie, was that romantic subplot.
It does feel a little shoehorned in.
A little.
Yeah.
I guess they wanted to give him more of a happy ending than just, oh, you have the power now, you're He-Man. That is kind of what the ending of this movie is just like... Speaking of which, when are we going to do Masters of the Universe on the podcast?
Oh, we'll get to it.
At some point, yeah. So, the Kurgan follows Brenda home and then kidnaps her. He like, breaks through the door, sort of like Jack Torrance in The Shining.
And this part's filmed really weirdly. There's all these red lights. It keeps doing close-ups of Kruger.
You said Kruger? I guess that is the name that he...
Yeah.
His, like, alias is, like... Oh, shoot. It was, like... Victor Krueger? Yeah, Victor Krueger.
Yeah.
I wonder if he chose that after Freddy Krueger, by any means. And then we get the scene of him just driving around on the highway playing chicken. It's insane. He just runs over a bunch of people, makes a lot of cars crash. Like, oh my goodness. Like,
and then we get the absolutely insane final fight.
Oh, you missed, they play another Queen song during that scene. It's a cover of New York, New York. Which, unfortunately, there isn't a full version of that song, but just that little snippet, I'm like, that's such a crazy cover right there. I wish they'd done a full version of it. And yeah, the Connery goes to find them. They end up at Silver Cup Studios. And then they start sword fighting, and it's insane. There's so much property destruction. I was wondering, like, after... There's not going to be much of New York left by the time this movie's over, is there?
At one point, they, like, cut, like, this massive pipe open, and it just floods the whole place with water. And so they're all just, like, fighting in waist-deep water. There's sparks everywhere every time their swords clash. It's fantastic.
All the sword fights in the movie are pretty fun, definitely. And then eventually he, like, cuts the Kurgan's head off, and the shot of his head, like tipping over is kind of cool, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, and then all this energy comes out of him, the quickening happens again, and just the special effects during this scene are crazy. You could, like, briefly see these, like, animated monsters in there. I don't know if you noticed.
And you can hear Connor yelling, like, I know everything.
Is that where Crystal Skull got the ending from? They just stole it from this?
Oh no, you might be right.
Is that where they stole it from? George Lucas watched Highlander, and he's like, you know, I need to put this in my movie, you know? And Spielberg reads it, and he's like, George, what the hell is this? And yeah, that's the final quickening that happens in the movie. It's just insane.
And he gains what is essentially omniscience from this.
He basically becomes a god, I guess.
Yeah.
Sort of. Well...
Because he's able to know all the thoughts of the people around him.
And understand, like, everything.
Yeah.
So he's, like, hoping to bring humanity together, which that actually does come into play at the beginning of Highlander 2, believe it or not.
Okay. And it also mentions that he's now mortal, which seems like a really weird prize for an immortal warrior, but...
I mean, I guess if you've lived 500 years and you've suffered through all that much, you'd probably want to just...
Yeah, you'd want a way out.
There should, at the very least, there should be an option to, like, do you want to die, or do you want to keep living?
Yeah.
And also, he, like, takes Brenda to Scotland at the end of the movie, so that's another thing that happens. The end credits play. You get another Queen song, of course. It's Kind of Magic. Which is based off of a line from that scene earlier in the movie when he's with Rachel during World War II.
Yeah.
She, like, asking him, you know, like,
you're alive. Why didn't you die?
Hey, it's a kind of magic.
But yeah, overall thoughts. I think it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's not a great movie, but it is fun to watch.
It's very fun. It has a pretty unique premise.
That's definitely one thing that sets it apart, you know.
I will
really
say...
get fantasy movies with this, like, kind of premise, usually.
Yeah.
So.
You don't get fantasy movies that take place in 1985.
Yeah, and have Queen songs on the soundtrack.
And honestly, I do have a couple problems with the movie. We talked about a few of them. But honestly, I just wanted more of sort of more immortal swordsmen, because we don't see a whole lot of him in this movie. We have the one in the intro. We see Sean Connery in the past.
Oh, you mean like more characters, basically? That are
Yeah, more of the immortal characters.
I would
maybe
agree
more
with
sword
that.
fights. Maybe we have somebody that's, allied to the Kurgan. Maybe another person who's on Connor's side.
Like maybe he like has this weird henchman that follows him around.
Yeah.
I can see that, yeah. And I think the pacing and like again the structure, the way it's told, like during the first half of it, it's kind of weird, especially the beginning. And we mentioned the romantic chemistry with Brenda and Connor doesn't.
It's not great.
It doesn't quite work.
No.
It's still better than Sorsha and Mad Mardigan, though.
That's not saying much.
And it's not quite Attack of the Clones, but again. Oh, imagine a scene of Connor McLeod just going, "I hate them! I killed them all!" That would actually fit this movie better than that one.
It would. Honestly, we need a new Highlander with Hayden Christensen essentially playing episode 2 Anakin.
We kind of do have that. There's this movie called Outcast.
Really?
That he was in with Nicolas Cage. I don't think they're immortal, but they are like swordsmen. So that's about the closest you can get to that. And Nicolas Cage's performance in that movie, I swear, it's like just his accent, the voice he chose for that movie is just so weird.
Wait, hold on. Is this a Chinese film?
I think so. Yeah, it is a horrible movie, but I watched it around when we were doing the Star Wars podcast because Hayden Christensen's in it, and I was laughing so hard at something. It is terrible. It's so bad. The only problem, I wish there was more Nicolas Cage in it though, because he shows up every now and again. But
it looks like Hayden Christensen is top billed in this movie.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stuff I like about the movie though, the music, obviously.
Yeah.
Great Queen songs. Good sword fights. I like good sword fights, in a movie. I think the plot is pretty interesting. Sean Connery and Clancy Brown, they're great.
They're like perfectly cast.
I wish Sean Connery had a little more screen time, but the screen time he does get, he definitely leaves an impression. And Clancy Brown's just that dude, just like you could tell that he relished just playing this character who's just pure, unabashed evil. One of the best soundtracks ever by one of the best bands ever, obviously. I like that it doesn't really have any pretensions about what it is. They were just here's a cool idea, let's have some fun with it. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah, it's not trying to be another Prometheus, which is nice.
Like, it just has all these strange touches to it that give it personality and set it apart. And I like the look of the movie, too.
Yeah.
The way it's shot is interesting. Like,
I especially like whenever a swordsman gets beheaded and then we see the quickening. That's always fun.
And like the locations they chose, I like the dirty streets of New York and then the muddy highlands. It gives this really interesting feel and kind of this unpolished, gritty look as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
The music. I mentioned the music. The Queen songs are great. But Michael Kamen's score is really good as well, I think. It definitely gives it a Highland feel.
Yeah.
Too, The visual effects, they're a bit dated, but they are fun.
Yeah.
Just all these flashing lightning and stuff. There's a charm to it, I think.
I'd say like all the quickening effects are done pretty well, but some of the other ones, like like we mentioned, the old when they tried to make Heather look old, that one didn't quite work.
Oh, the costumes are pretty good.
Oh yeah, especially Nash's at the end of the film. That's pretty good. Not Nash, sorry, Kurgan.
The Kurgan, yeah, the
Yeah.
jacket and the safety pins that he just has holding his neck together. Oh my gosh. And I like the mythology of the Immortals too, like how they've just been around a long time, and then they got to fight each other, And there's so much that they could have done with that concept, and instead they did sequels.
Are we ready to move on to the sequels?
Yes. Okay, so the trivia. There are a lot of sequels to this.
I was a little surprised at how many there were.
And that's hilarious for a number of reasons. What the main would be, the tagline of the first movie is "There can be only one."
And I would just like to say, this kind of, the end of the movie has there be only one, so it sort of defeats being able to have a sequel.
Oh my gosh. And the movie really does just feel like a one-off movie, too. Like
it does.
Like, where the hell do you go from there? If anything, "There can be only one" was like a warning.
Yeah.
Because the sequels, they're atrocious. They're pretty bad. The first sequel was the infamous Highlander 2: The Quickening, which is usually regarded as one of the worst sequels ever made. I mean, even just the title is a punchline at this point. It's a movie so bad that basically every sequel ignored it.
Ooh, that's not a good sign.
Like, you can't find the theatrical cut on DVD in the United States. Yeah, you have to, like, go to other regions to get it, like, because they re-edited, they, like, edited some stuff out. Because it might be because 10 minutes into the movie, it's revealed that the Immortals are aliens.
Oh! Well, that's interesting.
Which was never mentioned in the first movie because it's stupid as fuck. I mean...
Yeah.
And the movie also just feels more like sci-fi than fantasy because it takes place in the dystopian future of 2024.
Oh, only a year away.
And it rips off like a lot of set design from Blade Runner too. They like got these like flying like hover things. There's like a fight scene on those. Like, the whole future of it is, like, the ozone layer melted and they had to...
What?
And Connor McLeod got all the scientists together to, like, build a shield. Like, there's this thing called the Shield Corporation that, like, taxes people if they use the shield, which I'm like, why would you do that? Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery came back for it.
Okay.
And if you're wondering why Ramirez is back, even though he was decapitated in the previous movie, so am I.
Do they not explain it?
He basically gets resurrected because Connor McLeod says his name really loud.
That's pretty good.
Somehow, Ramirez returned. This is the original somehow Palpatine return, I guess.
Oh, no.
The real reason is because... The real reason why Ramirez is in this one is because Lambert would only do the movie if Sean Connery came back.
Ah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It features Michael Ironside as the villain.
Oh.
And his performance sort of reminds me of Michael Shannon as General Zod. Just a completely ridiculous, over-the-top performance. And The whole movie is nonsensical, but honestly, it does fall into the funny bad territory for me. Like, it's terrible.
Okay. Yeah.
But for me, it's the most entertaining of the sequels just due to how stupid it is. Like I mentioned before, sometimes I enjoy watching terrible sci-fi movies, and...
Is it a terrible sci-fi movie?
Yeah, maybe this is part of why that's the case. It's up there with Battlefield Earth. It's just one of the dumbest sci-fi action movies ever made. It's nothing about, like, it... Nothing in it makes any sense. One good thing about the movie, though, is the music's actually pretty good. It's not as good as the Queen soundtrack. They couldn't get Queen back to do the movie.
I figured as much.
Which is unfortunate. But they did get Stuart Copeland from The Police to do the score. And there's also an end credits song by Lou Gramm from Foreigner.
Oh.
So, yeah, there's some good music in it, at least. And, I mean, Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery, they look like they're having fun. Like...
That's good, at least.
Like, the acting isn't really the problem. It's just the plot. It's just so stupid. It completely destroyed the credibility of the series. Like, although Roger Ebert's review of it, I think, is funny. At the end of his review, he said, "If there is a planet somewhere whose civilization is based on the worst movies of all time, Highlander 2, The Quickening, deserves a sacred place among their most treasured artifacts."
That's pretty good.
And I guess I live on that planet then, because I love Highlander 2. Again, because it's bad, not because it's...
Yeah.
The theatrical cut was so reviled that it's never been released on DVD in the United States. You can only buy it in other regions. The version you can usually get is the Renegade version, which removed all references to them being aliens.
Okay, that's good at least.
And there was also a special edition, which, like, fixed a lot of the special effects. Although in the case of this movie, unlike Star Wars, it was actually a good thing, because the special effects in the theatrical cut don't look that good. Whereas this, they actually improved the special effects. I gotta give this piece of shit a new coat of paint, apparently. The movie is still ridiculous in these new cuts, but the plot makes a lot more sense than the theatrical cut.
That's good, at least.
I mean, at least they knew they fucked it up and tried to make amends. Like, that's more than I could say for some other sequels.
Yeah.
And basically, if we were going to do any of the other movies in the series on the podcast, I'd want to do this one, because honestly, it's kind of hilarious. Like, the choices, like, this fucking movie, it's just so batshit insane, it has to be seen to be believed. But that wasn't the last Highlander movie, because there was yet another one. There's Highlander 3, The Sorcerer.
Okay.
Or, as it was known in the US, Highlander: The Final Dimension. Notice there's no 3 in the title.
They're just trying to ignore the second one.
The plot completely ignores the second one, too. It's a pretty generic, low-budget sequel. It's not much to write home about. Very forgettable. It's just the same premise all over again.
Okay.
Have a sword fight, kill a guy. It ignores what happened in the second movie, because why wouldn't you? So it does feel more like the first movie, but not as good, basically.
Okay.
Christopher Lambert came back.
Wow.
But that's it. Mario Van Peebles plays the villain, and he sucks in it. It's like a third-rate Kurgan impression. Oh, and the reason... Okay, you might be wondering, wait a minute, so he won the prize in the first movie, so how are there other immortals? Well, apparently, the explanation is because Mario Van Peebles, his character, got trapped in a cave and wasn't able to participate in the gathering.
Well, hold on. That makes no sense. Because he still wouldn't have received the prize if there was still some dude hiding out in a cave.
It's so dumb, yeah, I know. Mako appears in this.
Okay.
If you want a Conan the Barbarian connection. He doesn't do narration like he did in Conan the Barbarian. He's basically just there to, like, train Connor McLeod. I guess he's like, they couldn't get Sean Connery back. They're like, okay, let's find just this other old dude and have him train McLeod instead. On a technical level, like from a writing standpoint, it probably is the best sequel, but that's really not saying much. Like, it's technically a better sequel than the second one.
Yeah.
But it's not as enjoyable, at least for me. Like, it doesn't cross over into the funny bad territory.
Okay.
But it's as good as the sequels got, I guess, because we got Highlander Endgame, and I haven't seen this one in years for obvious reasons. So I don't really remember it. Endgame is interesting because it stars Christopher Lambert and Adrian Paul, which Adrian Paul was the main character from the Highlander TV series.
Oh.
I think he's like Connor McLeod's cousin or something.
That's weird.
Duncan McLeod. I don't know how they explain that exactly, but so they were trying to tie the movie series in with the TV show, and it didn't work because this movie is terrible. Another thing I should point out is every Highlanders movie did not make its money back at the box office.
It's impressive that it went on for so long, then.
I guess enough people are hate watching the sequels that they just kept going. Like, people were just wondering, like, how bad are these going to get? But Endgame, it's just shot like a TV movie, and overall, it's just boring and painful to watch. And yet somehow it's not the worst movie of the series. I swear though, this has some of the worst editing I have ever seen for a film that was released in theaters.
Yeah,
it's just bad. They try again to do the flashback thing, but it doesn't work at all. Also, this movie cost $25 million.
Oh,
and it looks like direct to DVD garbage. It is shit.
That's not good.
The special effects are not $25 million worth, I'm telling you. It does have Donnie Yen in it, though, so it does have that going for it. Another thing about this movie is that it also has a director's cut. In fact, the first 4 movies all have them, technically. Because for some reason, the theatrical cut of Highlander Endgame cut out some important dialogue scenes.
Oh, that's always a good choice.
So the plot made no sense to people that went to see it in theater.
Yeah.
Not that it made much sense with those scenes in it, but anyway.
Yeah.
The next movie, and hopefully last movie in the series, was Highlander: The Source. It also starred Adrian Paul, and it's the only one of the 5 movies that doesn't have Christopher Lambert in it.
Okay.
I saw it once, and it is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It is...
Is it worse than The Quickening?
Well, it's way worse. It's way worse.
Oh, that's not good.
If it tells you anything, it was direct to DVD and it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, my favorite kind of movie.
Yeah, it's one of the worst sequels I ever made. Like, it's up there with Alien Resurrection, Halloween Resurrection, or S. Darko. It's just awful. Like, just no redeeming values. I'm not even going to talk anymore about it because I don't want to conjure up bad memories. You have to try really hard to make a worse sequel than Highlander 2, and this one somehow managed. But thankfully it wasn't released in theaters, so almost nobody saw it. So.
That's good at least.
I keep hearing they're thinking of doing a reboot, but nothing ever seems to go anywhere with that. Like, I heard they're gonna get Dave Bautista to be in it. I heard they're trying to cast Henry Cavill in a role in the movie.
Oh.
But I don't know if that will ever happen. There was a TV show.
Yeah.
And I might have seen one episode of it. I don't remember. From what I remember of it, it is better than the sequels, although what I have seen of it doesn't really look that interesting. It kind of just feels like a villain of the week type thing. I'm a little surprised at how long it lasted. It lasted for 6 seasons.
Oh, wow.
And Adrian Paul was the main star. Christopher Lambert appears in the pilot episode, but that's it.
Okay.
One thing I do like, they have the Queen song Princes of the Universe as the main theme, which is cool.
That's pretty good.
Yep. But again, I haven't seen that much of it. What I have seen of it, I'm just like, whatever. There were 2 other TV shows.
Wow.
One of which was animated, and I know nothing about them, to be honest. I found the animated one on Tubi, actually.
I'm reading the description for it. It sounds interesting.
I watched 1 episode of it. It's about Quentin MacLeod, and no, I have no idea what relation he has to Connor. And to make things even more confusing, his teacher is also named Ramirez.
Nice.
But he's not Sean Connery's character. He just has the same last name. It's weird. It's very obviously made for younger audiences. Very clearly made in the 90s. It wasn't that good. The animation wasn't very good. The voice acting was
I
mediocre
figured as
at
much.
best. They're like, oh, let's make Highlander for kids. Beheadings? What are those? The bad guys have these like weird tank things, and there's creatures as well. It's strange. It just feels like a generic animated fantasy kids show. It doesn't really feel like Highlander. There was an anime film called Highlander: The Search for Vengeance. I don't remember anything about it. But it is better than most of the movies. Like, it's better than the sequels, so there's that.
Okay.
As for critical reception for Highlander, Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs down.
Oh, really?
We're not fans of it. Leonard Maltin.
I'm gonna guess he gave it 2 stars.
2 stars?
Yep.
The same rating he gave Taxi Driver and The Dark Knight and
Exactly.
The Shining. He gave it 1.5 stars.
I was close.
But he also gave Blade Runner 1.5 stars and First Blood. He called it silly and boring. Says the guy who liked Batman Forever. Batman Forever is like the epitome of silly and boring. I mean, in preparation, actor Christopher Lambert spent months working 4 hours each morning with a dialect coach and 4 hours in the afternoon sword training with Bob Anderson, who had been a Darth Vader stunt double in the Star Wars movies.
Huh.
So Darth Vader trained the Highlander.
So I've got a few pieces.
Let me guess. Is one of them a video game?
Potentially all of them. So there was a video game adaptation of the first movie made in 1986, just called Highlander. It was released for the Commodore 64 and a couple other similar computers.
Commodore 64. Oh, now we're going somewhere.
And it sucks.
Oh, who would have guessed?
It's essentially
Let me guess.
Let me
guess. Most of it is you play Brenda investigating. Or is it more or less boring than that?
So it's technically an arcade fighter.
That sounds about right, yeah.
It's pretty bad looking. The graphics aren't great, and apparently it's clunky. You do fight a number of characters from the film. So in your first round, you fight against Ramirez. Then you fight against Facil, who in this one is named Fizzer. before, and then at the end you fight the Kurgan.
You forgot.
And that's
at
it.
the end, the last boss is Mike Tyson.
Now, that is only one of 2 Highlander games ever released. And I'm just mentioning this one because I don't think I'd ever really have a chance to mention it at any other time. So it was called Highlander, The Last of the MacLeods. Do you care to guess what console this was released for? It was released in 1995.
Was it the CDI?
Almost. It was the Atari Jaguar CD.
Oh no, the Jaguar.
One review called it a lowlight of the system. Basically saying it's one of the worst games on the Jaguar CD.
Give me a refresher. What are, like, some other games for the Jaguar?
Let me pull up.
Like, what's its competition for worst?
Honestly, there's not a whole lot, just because it is the Jaguar. Why don't I remember its name? But the Where Did You Learn to Fly game, that was a Jaguar.
That's right, yeah. I don't remember the name of that game either. I just remember the AVGN.
Yeah.
Where did you learn to fly?
Where did you learn to fly?
Where was she during the NES Top Gun game, by the way? Cybermorph?
Yes, it was Cybermorph.
And Battlemorph. Where did you learn to fly? Oh my god.
And then one last video game related piece of trivia that I have. This movie is referenced in the video game Team Fortress 2. One of the characters is his name is the Demo Man, is a one-eyed Scottish pyrotechnic, and he can wield a sword called the Highlander, and it's a giant Scottish claymore.
Nice. I'm surprised there aren't more movies with swords like that, actually.
Yeah.
I guess it's inconvenient having to build your own sword when you take it with you places. Another thing I was just thinking, okay, so the Jaguar game, that came out in 1995?
Yes. One thing I guess I forgot to mention with that is that it is an adaptation of the show.
Okay, because I was about to say that's about when Highlander 3 came out.
Okay, I think it was... Oh, so it's based off of the animated series.
Oh no.
Where you play as Quentin MacLeod.
No wonder it's so bad. Looks like the Zelda CDI games. You'd think, like, Highlander would make a great video game.
You would, but no one's done it.
Yeah, I guess they're... Like, imagine, like, a Highlander tournament fighter game.
Like, that would be great. That's like, perfect.
Highlander, basically.
Exactly.
Did you have anything else, or...?
That was it.
Kurt Russell was also considered to play Connor MacLeod.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Imagine Kurt Russell trying to do a Scottish accent.
He just wouldn't have tried, just like Sean Connery not trying a Spanish accent.
Yeah. It's just Sean Connery, like, he just never changes his accent, no matter who he's playing. In Hunt for Red October, he's playing a Russian.
He's playing a Russian with a Scottish accent.
And they never address it either.
I know.
In Last Crusade, he still has a Scottish accent, but they never address that Indiana Jones' dad is Scottish, apparently. Christopher Lambert dubbed his own voice in the French version of the film.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because, again, he's French. Ramirez is the only character besides James Bond that Sean Connery played in more than one movie.
Huh.
The filmmakers were shocked to find out after signing a contract for Christopher Lambert to play Connor MacLeod that he spoke absolutely no English.
That is fantastic.
Christopher Lambert had just barely learned to speak English when he took this role. The only other English-speaking movie he had been in at that point was Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, in which he only spoke a few words.
Huh.
Queen originally intended to record only one song for this movie, but after viewing footage from the movie, they were inspired to write more.
Huh.
The band members each had a favorite scene and composed songs specifically for them. Brian May wrote Who Wants to Live Forever during the cab ride home after seeing the movie, and Roger Taylor used the line, "It's a Kind of Magic," as the basis for the end title song.
Huh.
According to director Russell Mulcahy, when they first shot the scene of the Kurgan bursting through a door to cut the table in half, Clancy Brown instead ran in and cut through the candelabra, nearly decapitating Sean Connery. As a result, Connery stormed off the set. Later, Connery returned and Brown apologized, saying he was very nervous. Connery joked that he should use his stunt double more.
Getting a little too into character there, are we, Clancy?
You should use your stunt double more, boy. This is interesting. Director Russell Mulcahy said that filming The Stag was a nightmare.
I imagine.
Because at the time of filming, all stags had lost their horns. It was decided to glue on antlers. Veterinarian put the animal to sleep, the horns were glued on, and then they had to wait for it to awaken. Once it did, all the deer wanted to do was shake off the antlers. During filming, the stag ran away and never came back. It was found later, 25 miles away and without the horns. Some of the stag scene, standing in water, is National Geographic stock footage.
Huh.
The cast had such a good time doing the movie, they filmed additional scenes for free, detailing McLeod's relationship with his assistant. Man, they must have had a lot of fun making it then. According to director Russell Mulcahy, the crew felt that Clancy Brown had become the Kurgan, and some refused to go near him. He is kind of a scary-looking dude, to be fair. He is. The opening scene was intended to take place during an NHL hockey match, but the NHL refused to allow the crew to film there because, by the crew's own admission, they were intending to emphasize the violence of the hockey match.
Ah.
Well, we can't make hockey players look terrible. Another thing, I'm not seeing it here, but one thing that's worth bringing up is Christopher Lambert actually had really bad eyesight.
Huh.
So, like, he couldn't see that well without his glasses, so sometimes he would accidentally hurt the other actors during the fight scenes.
Huh. That's unfortunate.
I think during, like, filming of, like, Highlander 2, he cut off... I can't remember if it was him or if it was Michael Anderson, but one of them got part of their finger cut off.
Oh,
wow. Like a broadsword, yeah. And then obviously he would have used a stunt double during some of it, 'cause you can't just have this guy who could barely see fighting with a sword. Clancy Brown improvised the line in which he poignantly addressed the sparse congregation and clergy in the church. "I have something to say. It's better to burn out than to fade away." Which were from, Rock of Ages. He was more quoting the version from the song Rock of Ages, but it was technically an Neil Young song as well.
Okay.
Called Hey, Hey, My, My. There are a lot of deleted scenes, apparently. Oh, this is interesting. Apparently there was, like, a deleted scene where Connor meets Thomas Jefferson.
Huh.
Well, a lot of it was flashbacks, apparently. But a lot that footage is, like, lost. Like, that happened to a lot of movies back then. They filmed stuff, it got cut, so they wouldn't preserve it. So Yeah, we're lucky to have any deleted scenes at all from back then. Oh, another thing that's interesting, the guy that wrote this, Gregory Wyden, he wrote the script while he was at the UCLA.
Oh.
And he sold the script to Hollywood while he was there, apparently. Now, imagine that, you're like at college, you sell a script, and then it gets turned into a movie. All of a sudden, like... Clancy Brown originally wanted the Kurgan to be dressed in a suit and bowler hat.
That would have been weird.
What some of the other bands and artists considered for the soundtrack: David Bowie, Sting, and Duran Duran.
Huh. Well, the Duran Duran one makes sense.
Yeah, because he directed a bunch of videos.
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer and Nick Nolte were considered for the role of the Kurgan.
Huh.
Oh, I would have loved to have seen Rutger Hauer in a Highlander movie. I could totally see him as a Highlander villain.
Yeah.
After filming the scene where the Kurgan confronts MacLeod in the church, Clancy Brown apologized to the priest and nuns there for his character's dialogue for fear that he had offended them. That's another thing that's great to hear. Even though he played just this horrible dude, Clancy Brown's a nice guy in real life.
Yeah.
At least from what I could tell. It sounds like he got along pretty well with Sean Connery, too. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Unless you have anything else to say.
I don't think I do, no. And so next time, we have a very interesting movie.
I almost forgot what we were doing next. I was like, I was going to make a joke. I was going to say we were doing like Masters of the Universe or something.
Should we even introduce what this next one is going to be?
We're not introducing it?
Or should it be a surprise?
Okay, well, I'm going to say right now, it's another one of those movies that I think you brought it to my attention.
Yes. Oh Lord, it's directed, screenplay, and story by the same guy. And produced by, it's one of those movies.
Oh, apparently Mary Shelley has a credit on the script. But I guess there's one clue now that people have. But yeah, this is a movie that I've never seen it. Neither of us have seen it. But the premise sounded insane, and the title I think is hilarious. So I'm like, you know what? Let's see what this is. Might as well.
And so join us.
Whether we'll regret this decision or not, I have no idea.
And so join us next time for a very magical movie. Until then, play the Andy Griffith.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.